In a past episode, I showed you some of the street libraries in the Blue Mountains, and since then I've actually found some more. But street libraries aren't the only kind of library you can find up here. The City of Blue Mountains Library has 6 branches, and they're strung out across the highway for 100 kilometres, sort of like pearls along a necklace. And for the very first time, I am going to visit all of these libraries, and I'm going to borrow something from every single one of them. My first stop is Katoomba Library because it's the closest to my house and the one I visit all the time. It's part of the Blue Mountains Cultural Centre, which was built in 2012, and it has the most amazing views all across the Katoomba shops and towards the Jamison Valley. Inside, the architecture takes advantage of those views, and it's really light and airy. When you go upstairs to the young adult and DVD sections, the view is even better. And because it's a fairly big library, it has a lot of useful sections, like the Aboriginal Knowledge Centre, the audiobooks section, the young adult section, the children's section, the new books section, the magazines section, the sci-fi and fantasy section, the true crime section, and the crime and thriller section. Now, I come to this library so much that I've picked it pretty clean. So it turns out I've already read this Gary Disher and this Jeffrey Deaver. But I haven't read this Nick Hornby, so I get that. Now, I'm a huge Nick Hornby fan. As you can see, I've got most of his books either in my bookshelf or on Kindle. So I was really excited to find this one, which I haven't even read yet. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. Also, the other book I got at Katoomba Library was this. It's called Banquet, The Untold Story of Adelaide's Family Murders. And I thought to myself, I don't even know what the family murders are, and it sounds like I should, so I thought I'd borrow this as well. My next stop is Wentworth Falls Library, just down the road, which is in a very different building from the Katoomba Library. The School of Arts building, dating from 1914, contains the library and a theatre. It's a teeny weeny library, but it's amazing how much is packed into just one room. A room with beautiful windows. There's a large print section. There's a teeny little children's section. And there's a foreign language section, which might have something to do with the school over the road, but it might not. There's also a little true crime section where I decide not to borrow the book on Alison Baden Clay's murder. But I do borrow something called The Widow of Walcher, which again is a case I've never heard of. And lo and behold, there's a Sally Rooney. I love normal people, so I decide to get this one. Also, after borrowing a book by rom-com writer Beth O'Leary called The Flat Share and really enjoying it, I noticed on the cover she was compared to a writer called Jojo Moyes, so I borrowed a book by Jojo Moyes. Library number 3 I've already visited on this channel when I did the Ghost Story episode, because the building that the Lawson Library is housed in is supposed to be haunted, though not the library itself. Again, it's a tiny little library in a beautiful building, but they've managed to pack a lot in here. Including a children's section. And I managed to find a Michael Rowbotham I haven't read. And a Marina Lewica I haven't read. And a very interesting sounding non-fiction involving the historian Hugh Trevor Roper and some fraudulent priest. The next library down the mountains is Springwood Library, which, like Katoomba, is another big one, very recently built. It's part of the Springwood Cultural Hub, though the library itself is kind of stuck on the side of that building. Inside, it's extremely nice, with a lovely view and DVD section and a children's section. And some really interesting models of old local buildings, which probably have something to do with Springwood Library being the focus of local history and family history research. If you go downstairs, you'll find the research centre with all kinds of old books and reference materials, records, indexes. It's fantastic. Back upstairs, I'm looking around for books to borrow, and I find my own book, Shelter, which of course I put on the highly recommended shelves because why not? I figure The Last Stone sounds interesting, so I borrowed that. Along with another Michael Rowbotham I haven't read yet, and a Beth O'Leary I haven't read yet. At the very bottom of the Blue Mountains is Blaxland Library, which again is pretty small, though not as small as Wentworth Falls. And which has the most enormous children's section. But even though it isn't massive, I find a Geoffrey Deaver I haven't even seen before, let alone read, and a couple of books by Elliot Perlman, who I met once a long time ago when we were both speaking at a literary festival. I remember liking his book $3 about, 30 years ago, so I thought I might try another. Last stop for me was at the other end of the Blue Mountains, Blackheath Library, which I think is the smallest of them all and probably the oldest, built about 1906. It's so tiny, but it does have an itsy bitsy sci-fi and fantasy section. And would you believe, a copy of Olive Again by Elizabeth Strout. Her Olive Kittredge is one of my favourite books, so I was so excited to find this. So there you have it, my lovely library book haul. What I'm going to do with these books is obviously read them, and then in a few weeks I'll review them the way I did with my birthday book haul, except of course these books are borrowed, not bought. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on my tour of the Blue Mountain City Library branches. And until next time, happy reading. I hope your reading is as happy as mine will be with all my lovely new books.